Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Successfully Implement Breakfast in the Classroom. Today's presenters are Eddie Ruiz, Principal of Jackson Middle School in Orlando, Florida, Susan Chin, Principal at Vesey Street Elementary School in Providence, Rhode Island, and Raphael Crawford, Principal at Maynard Elementary in Knoxville, Tennessee. Each of these principals brings a unique perspective to breakfast in the classroom and shows that it's through the leadership of the principal that this program can be successful. First, I will present to you Eddie Ruiz.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you guys for being on the conference call. Here it's 4 o'clock, so I know it's late in the day, but it's very important, at least at our school, and we take it very seriously, breakfast in the classroom, and I find it an honor to be able to present at least our successes here at Jackson Middle School in Orlando. I could share some successes with you and really how it's impacted us at the middle school level, which is one of the very few schools here in our large county. We have over 139 elementary schools, over 40 elementaries, over 40 middle schools, and over 20 high schools in our district. We serve over 180,000 students, and we're one of the very few middle schools that are offering this program to our students. Just to tell you a little bit about Jackson Middle School, we are a Title I school, 86% free and reduced. The last 2 years, we're almost going to reach 90 this year, and we're pushing towards that. But our enrollment is about 1,350 students. We serve about 489 in 6th grade, 432 in 7th grade, and in 8th grade about 427 students. We're majority Hispanic, almost 70%, white 15%, and black 11%. So we have a big mix of diversity here at our school. We do serve a faculty of about 88 faculty and about 20 staff members, so over 100 members here that we're having to deal with. Why breakfast in the classroom? To be honest, and for the last 2 years, we've been working on it. This is going to be our third year, actually our second year, really going into the program. I give you some stats and some data, as data-driven instruction is one of our priorities, really looking at what did our numbers look like in 2010, 2011. And really in that year, we were only serving about 350 to 400 students eating breakfast in the morning time. We did break down and disaggregate our data for discipline and had about level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Those are the levels of severity, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest, where students get expelled from school. And at our school, we had the breakdown of level 1s, 24, 2s were 260, 3s, 344, and those kids usually were in school or out of school suspension for maybe 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 days. And level 4s basically were the extreme cases. We had 21 of those. Our attendance, our average attendance daily rate was about 93%. And so when I started to implement breakfast in the classroom in 2011 and 2012, what we started to see was a dramatic increase in how many students were eating breakfast in the morning. We started opening it up. Not only were the kids going into the cafeteria to eat, but we had carts all around the school, and we increased kids eating breakfast to an average of about 1,150 to 2,100 at one point, students eating breakfast. Actually, no, that shouldn't say 2,100. That should say 1,200. I apologize. 1,150 to 1,200 students that were eating breakfast at one given point, which was a dramatic increase. Our disciplines for that year, as we started to look at it, definitely decreased from 4 level 1s, 233 level 2s, 265 level 3s, and our level 4s kind of stayed the same. But I started to look at that in our level 2s. Our level 1s, basically kids who were tardy to school, we started to pinpoint that a little bit. Our tardies, kids weren't getting tardy anymore because now they were being provided breakfast every single morning. Our level 2s, that went down a little bit from disruptances that were going on in the classroom. We were able to pinpoint that to really kids, I think, eating the breakfast and actually now being a little bit aware and being a little bit awake and alert now in the morning times. And our attendance did go up to about 95% average daily attendance that next school year. If I can just add a little bit for this year we are averaging about 1,150 still for breakfast, and the kids are so excited about eating breakfast. Our teachers are eating the breakfast, and we've continued that momentum from last year. How does it work at our school? And it works differently at different schools. You have to make it work as the principal. You have to make it work for your students, your staff, and really how logistically you have your master schedule set up, your supervision set up. So for us, what we do, we start at 9:30. So we open the doors at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we have three major entry points. We have a bus loop where we have about 20 buses that drop off students. We have a car loop on the opposite side that parents bring in and drop their kids off, because we are a magnet for IB, International Baccalaureate. So we do have some some parents that drop off their kids that have to drive a little lengthy way to get here. And then we have our walkers and our bike riders that come in from the back of the school and from another entry on the side. So those are three major entry points. So basically, any student that arrives before 9:15, they're sent to the gym basically as a holding pattern until we get started for breakfast. And 9:15, that's when we start releasing our students. And we have 4 breakfast carts, actually now 4 carts. I have my cafeteria manager that's actually sitting in with me, and we're doing this together. But we have 4 breakfast carts that are located strategically around our campus. We have an open major courtyard that we have 2 carts set up there. And then we have one by the car loop and one by the bus loop. And basically, what we end up doing is as kids start being released from the gym, and as kids are coming in from the buses and the car loop, which all happens simultaneously, those kids are all lining up getting breakfast at the cart. It has become habit now, so kids automatically go there. There is no scanning in. We do a tick sheet, so no kids are being identified as free and reduced or not free and reduced. Every kid eats for free, so every kid's picking up their meal. They decide if it's cold, if it's hot, and they move on. And from there, they start heading to their classrooms to go eat their breakfast. The gym, a little bit more specific, the gym starts releasing at 9:10. If the kids there are there a little bit early, we start releasing by grade level, and we release our 6th graders to the cafeteria if they're there already. So that really opens up one line there for our 6th graders to get breakfast, and our 7th and 8th graders are then sent to the courtyard to hit one of the 4 lines that are there, 2 in the courtyard and 1 on either side that they can go and pick up their breakfast. Our leadership team and teachers are all there helping to supervise. I mean, I have a large leadership team, and we're all able there to be on the courtyard watching that, making sure kids are in line and acting appropriately. The cool thing is that the teachers are also in line with the kids eating breakfast. So the teachers, they get here early as well. They're getting in line, eating the breakfast, and it's helping maintain the orderly conduct that we need in those lines. And as soon as the kids get the breakfast, they're sent off to class where they go eat the breakfast. A sample menu that you may see on a weekly basis, I provided that so you can kind of see it. The kids, I mean, all of this is healthy. We're one of the pilots for the Healthy School Challenge, and so all of our food is very nutritious and very well organized by our cafeteria manager, and it's very tasty. On a given day, you can have a chicken biscuit or a cereal bar or a yogurt parfait, mini cine, which is a mini cereal bar you could get. We also have fruit. We have our favorite is our pancakes that come in a little package, blueberry pancakes, and so those are some of the some of the samples that you can see Monday through Friday. We also have some things where they can get grab and goes, where it's not necessarily a hot item, but they can grab a cold item, whether it's a fruit or where they can get some cheese or something like that, where they can take with them with their juice and head straight to class. Some of the challenges that I did occur last year as being the first year to do it is I did receive a call from the district saying, look, we're wanting to implement breakfast in the classroom. We're looking for volunteers. And I volunteered early on in the year that I wanted to do something like that. I truly believe in it for my personal background and my philosophy. I think a student who comes to school with food in their belly is going to be able to, be very productive in the classroom and is going to be able to focus. So I had volunteered to say yes. But the challenge that came about is when I said yes, they said, okay, you're going to start it, but you're going to start it in April. And for us, that's the middle of testing for our state assessment, the FCAT, the Florida Comprehension Test that we have. And so that was the biggest challenge. We now had to start it the week of FCAT. So that was one of our biggest hurdles. Another one is, I know that the principals that are listening to this are thinking, well, the cleanup is going to be a mess. How are you going to clean up this mess around campus? Well, part of the grant that we received for breakfast in the classroom, we were able to purchase extra garbage cans, and we were able to just logistically plan out with our cafeteria manager where these carts were going to be, where the bins were going to be, so kids, if they ate it on the way to class, they can dump it in there. And in the classroom, we provided teachers with extra bags so that if they had some extra trash in there, they could put it in there, and our custodians came by and picked it up. Logistics with the leadership team, basically some of the things that we did encounter as well, teachers being in the room. Well, our teachers, school didn't start till 9:30, and basically teachers would get into their room usually maybe 9:15, 9:20, but by doing breakfast in the classroom, now they had to be there a little bit earlier to get those kids that were grabbing their breakfast and heading straight to class. So what we did and what I did with the teachers is we had a conversation with them. We talked to them about it. They all agreed that they would be able to go a little bit early to their class to do that in lieu of me giving them some type of duty that's part of their contract. So I don't give my teachers a duty period. I allow them to go early to class first period so that they can all take advantage of kids eating in the classroom. Timing. Another issue that I thought is, well, this is going to take a lot of time up for my first period, and it's going to eat up my time of instructional time for these students and teachers. And what I found out to be is that the kids, as they came eating in the classroom at 9:15, they were done way by 9:30. If we had a late bus that would come in or late students that picked up their breakfast at about 9:25, teachers were very flexible with those kids, and the kids would be done by 9:32, 9:33 the latest. There is nobody still eating breakfast by 9:35 when we are already in the midst of going on with instructional time in first period. So I worried about that, but we figured out a way, and it was very useful in following that protocol. Materials, how are the kids going to know that we're doing this? How are we going to let them know that they can eat free breakfast? So we had to get banners and materials in garbage cans, cues for the lines where the kids would line up so they would be orderly. All these things I thought about, sat and talked to my cafeteria manager. How are we going to be able to facilitate this so that it's orderly and it's not a mess and that it's done correctly? And another thing that I did notice as we got into it is how can we monitor kids taking more than one breakfast? Because believe it or not, now kids, and I am at a high poverty school, kids are taking 1, 2, 3 breakfasts so they can give it to their siblings later on in the school day when they get home, or they're eating 2 times. So we had to find out as a logistical issue, how can we deal with that problem so that kids are not taking more than one breakfast? So those were all my challenges. The benefits, I definitely saw this right away as principals. We're in the classrooms doing classroom walkthroughs, or now the new evaluation systems that we have in place. But I started to see kids there was definitely more engagement with the students. Kids were engaged as we walked in through classrooms. They were doing their bell work. Their heads weren't down. Across the board, we saw kids way more engaged than we had seen the previous year. We also saw an increase in relationships between teacher and students. So now teachers were actually in the classroom having conversations, not about content, but really about how their day went, and started opening up, and relationships started to build with these first period teachers and students. And we started to see some bonding there that happened that eventually ended up to some student achievement results increasing. Teacher morale and attendance and timeliness, because teachers now got to eat free breakfast and didn't have to stop at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or get some food on the way. They were eating here. You got to see teachers now that were usually tardy. They were now getting to class, they were here early now to make sure that that breakfast was there. And the morale was there where all teachers are out in the courtyard now. They're eating the breakfast. They're talking. So we did see an increase in morale and attendance, timeliness with that. Test scores. I did get to see test scores at this time when I had done this slide. I was hoping that it's ideal and optimistic that all the things that happen do result in student achievement, and we did see some student achievement gains from the previous year, last year. and I definitely do have to attribute it to our Breakfast in the Classroom initiative, because, again, a kid who eats and is ready in first period is going to actually do good, and is going to be focused and more engaged, and he's going to do the work. Another big thing that I did see is our clinic visits. We have an LPN, a nurse, that is on staff. We saw 235 visits in 3 quarters from 2010, 2011 to 75 visits last year in the nurse's office. And what we used to see a lot is our nurse would give out crackers and juice to kids a lot of the times who had not eaten breakfast. But we're not doing that anymore because now the kids are eating free breakfast, so we're actually seeing the major issues in the nurse's office instead of just kids whose head hurt because they hadn't eaten or some other issue that was attributed to not eating breakfast in the morning. Recommendations for other principals. My cafeteria manager is in here with me, and I think you have to have a good relationship with your cafeteria manager. That the initial conversations between him and I, we sat down, we talked about all the logistics, how this was going to work, how I was going to support him, how he was going to support me, and it was a relationship that together we were able to make it work. So I think a good relationship with your cafeteria manager is essential. I think you need support from the district level because it's going to require some extra funds here or there to get some extra materials, and your district is going to have to support you on that to make sure that they give you what you need to make sure that this program is successful. From the Food and Nutrition Services Department all the way to facilities, and every department needs to be able to jump on board with you. And you need to have, I definitely recommend a logistics plan of how this is all going to work. How are the kids going to eat? What is the protocol? What are the logistics of them picking up their breakfast, taking it to class? Have you worked the logistics out? If you have union issues in your area, how are you going to work with the union issues to make sure teachers are with you and on board with you? And I had conversations with groups of teachers all throughout the school year to make sure that they were going to be on board with this initiative. And when they saw the benefits at the end, they all had nothing nothing bad to say and said, let's try it, it's for our kids. So those are some recommendations that I would definitely recommend for you, and I would take any questions at this time if you have any.
Thanks, Eddie. For those of you who are participating and viewing the webinar, please use the questions box on the screen to submit any questions that you have. Eddie, one question did come in. And it relates to your relationship with your food service director. Could you address your relationship and how closely you worked with her?
With my cafeteria manager?
Also with the food service director.
Well, yeah, okay, the food service director from the district is the one that initially called me and said, we're interested in piloting this program in certain schools. I'm the one that responded back to her. And I know her, and she's been at our school, and she knows what we're dealing with. And so the relationship that I had with her was it was a good one. And so with that said, I think that transpired down to our cafeteria manager that also I had a good relationship with. And together they were here helping us implement the program. They got us the carts. We needed 4 carts, and we had the 4 carts within a couple weeks. We had to get some wireless computers to put on the carts. And that costs money to get some wireless carts and get computers and get all that worked out. She was able to facilitate that. So, I mean, whatever we needed, it was a can-do attitude. They got it done.
That's great. We have one other question. I think we've had this on a previous webinar. Did you have any issue with rodents?
Oh, very good question. It was interesting because last year when we started this, there was a roach scare across our district where we had a health inspection crew coming out to schools at nighttime to see if there were rodents or roaches, and certain cafeterias were closed down. So I was kind of nervous about that year that happened, but to tell you the truth, I couldn't even tell you one incident where there was a rodent or a roach involved. I will tell you where the communication came into play. We were serving syrup with our pancakes, and what eventually happened, I got an email within the week and said our teachers were like, hey, we're worried about the syrup. How can we deal with the syrup in the classroom? It's sticky. And so what we ended up doing is working it with our cafeteria managers where we weren't giving the syrup or minimizing that and having a plan for the teachers so they can eat that before they got into the classroom, and it worked out that way so there wasn't syrup all over the place on desks. So, but for roaches, not even one. There was no issue with that and no rodents at all.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Eddie. We are going, if anybody else has any other questions, we will continue to send them in throughout the webinar, and we will take more questions at the end of each speaker, but also at the end. So again, use the box on your screen to submit questions to us, and we will provide those questions to the speakers. Thanks, Eddie.
No problem.
Our next presenter is Susan Chin. She's the principal at Vesey Street Elementary in Providence, Rhode Island.
Hi, good afternoon,
Thank you for being
everyone. First, I'd like to just let everyone know that I'm very honored to be able to participate in this and very happy to share our story of our implementation of breakfast in the classroom here in Providence, Rhode Island. And I do have to say that listening to Eddie, we definitely do share some very similar positive results as Eddie has experienced in his school. And also it sounds that we've gone through some of the and faced some of the similar challenges and have worked through those challenges. So to start us off, let me give you a little bit of background about my elementary school. First, we are located in Providence, Rhode Island, so we are Rhode Island's largest urban district. We have, as a whole district, about approximately 24,000 students. Here at my school, I have approximately 670 students currently. We are a Title I school, and we have about 94% free and reduced lunch. Our grade structure here is that we have kindergarten through grade 5. I have regular ed, ESL, and special education. So we do have a diverse urban population. And next slide. And with the Breakfast in the Classroom program here in Providence, our food service company is with Sodexo, and we do have an outstanding partnership with them. And as Eddie had mentioned, I also have a great working relationship with the Sodexo food service director and with my school kitchen lead. And those two relationships become very key in piloting, planning, and rolling out breakfast in the classroom. What we have done is in 2010, Vesey piloted the program. So the discussion came across the district, and essentially at a meeting with the superintendent, we were tasked with piloting the program, which meant that we really had to build it from the ground up. And so starting in September, what was key was bringing together a leadership team to really take a look and look at the research, look at some models, and really design something that we knew was going to work for us in our school. We were so successful with that we rolled that initiative out by spring to the rest of the elementary schools. And this past year, in 2011, 2012, we did have a full district rollout with secondary, so that's middle school and high school. And with all of the schools, we're able to provide universal free breakfast. So no one pays for breakfast. Now, the impact that that has had on for the district over the past year, here at the school, I have seen approximately an 80% increase in breakfast participation. The fact that it's universal free breakfast, I think, helps to avoid the stigma that students might feel about who's paying, who gets reduced, who gets free. Everyone eats for free. And what we've seen also is that has actually had an impact on lunch service, where with more students eating breakfast, we're actually seeing more students eating lunch. So over the past year with the implementation across the district, we're looking at statistics of Sodexo serving over 800,000 breakfasts and 200,000 more lunches. And now with that, being Title I, and again, this is universal free breakfast, there's a federal reimbursement that comes back to the district. So over the time, with the increase in breakfast and lunch participation, our district has brought back approximately $500,000. So that money comes back to us in the district, and I'll actually talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides in terms of what it is we use those funds for and how it does come back to benefit us in a couple of different manners. All right, next slide, please. What I'd like to just go over quickly are just some of the benefits that we've experienced with our implementation. So in regards to students, again, some of the similar characteristics that Eddie had spoken about, we've had a huge reduction in tardiness with our students. With our little ones on the elementary level, prior to breakfast in the classroom, We did have a higher tardy rate. A good number of those tardies were due to the fact that children were trying to eat breakfast at home. They were getting hung up at home, therefore coming to school late. Also, we would have students that would have these stomach aches mid-morning. And lo and behold, a visit to the nurse usually resulted in a couple of graham crackers and a little container of juice, and that cured the problem. So we were having a number of students that were not eating, which was causing them to lose instructional time, take a visit to the nurse. We'd have, I would traditionally stock my nurse up. She has a refrigerator in her office, and we would have little snacks and things, so we would be prepared for that mid-morning visit. With breakfast in the classroom, we've seen a huge reduction, not only in the tardiness, but the children are staying in the classroom. The nurse visits are greatly reduced. We're also finding from feedback from teachers also that the students are more focused. They settle into a routine first thing in the morning. So the byproduct of that is we're getting better student production with academics. And then also during that breakfast time, because I know that was a main concern when we first started, which was, is this going to take away instructional time? How am I going to fit this in? By designing an operation that really is seamless, it's not intrusive to the instructional process, and it's in a way a learning opportunity. A lot of our teachers, what they've been able to do is create a routine for the children. When they come in, while they're eating breakfast, they're still engaged in some meaningful activity, because this is the time that the classroom teacher is taking attendance, she's collecting homework, she's collecting parent notes. So there are those administrative duties that happen first thing in the morning in the classroom. So the teacher is already engaged, taking attendance and doing those things. So the children are eating breakfast, but while they're eating breakfast, they're engaged in an activity. So if I have my older students, they might be there working on a math problem or reading a story or reading a science paragraph. My younger students, we've utilized this as an opportunity to build classroom routines and build that classroom community, that culture. So for example, in our first grade, we have breakfast buddies. So the classroom teachers will have a rotational schedule where the children come in, they grab their breakfast, they go to a table, but there will be different students. They'll rotate through the class. So breakfast will be a time that they can socialize, but they're meeting the other children in their class, and the teacher will set them up with a discussion question. So we have tried to really capitalize on the breakfast time in terms of layering on some meaningful activities. Next slide, please. With in regards to the federal reimbursement funds, that $500,000 that is coming back to us in the district, that money is earmarked and used back in the schools to renovate and to maintain the cafeteria and the kitchen areas of the schools. So in a renovation, for example, what we've seen is when Sodexo has had to come in and replace equipment, ovens, refrigerators, fryer-laters, so forth, the equipment that's coming in are energy efficient units. So as a byproduct of breakfast, we receive federal funds. It rolls back into our kitchen. The equipment that's coming in is more energy efficient, which in turn benefits the district again in lower utility costs. Another example is that we are on a district cycle of upgrading and or replacing the dishwashing units in all of the schools. What that will do once we cycle through is reduce our need and use of the disposable foam trays. So again, there's a cost saving factor with the purchase of these disposable items, but then there's also a benefit for the environment in general. So we're seeing a lot of these side benefits as we move forward. Something that also we've seen evolve, and I have to say from my seat as a principal, when we were originally talking about this pilot and planning this out and implementing, was I really hadn't thought that this program would evolve to impact our local economy here in Rhode Island. what has happened, which is incredibly exciting this past year, is that Sodexo has actually contracted with a local family-run farm, Pezza Farms, and they've contracted 15 acres of that farm, and the crops that are grown on those 15 acres are exclusively for Sodexo, for use back here in the public schools. And so, for example, the blueberries and the apples that are grown are now then shipped to local vendors here in Rhode Island. And, for example, the muffins that we use, they're whole grain muffins. We have blueberry, carrot, cucumber, and apple. And those muffins are made by a local bakery where before the Sodexo contract, this local bakery was going to go out of business. And so now this bakery has a contract to make approximately 15,000 muffins at a time for Sodexo for use in the breakfast program. So with a national push to really support local farmers and local businesses, the breakfast in the classroom now actually reaches out to us as a whole state. And next slide, please. And so as we were planning out our rollout, some considerations that we had thought of was, first and foremost, we gathered together a leadership team. It was key to have input on the planning stages from staff and from families. So we gathered together a leadership team to really start talking about what this program would look like. By doing that, we helped to build buy-in from our stakeholders, and with that, we helped to, I think, dispel some of the perceptions that people might have had, such as the loss of instructional time. Labor became an issue, too, in terms of who was going to do this, how was this going to happen. So by creating an operation that really was very seamless, was not labor-intensive, teachers didn't feel as if this was another job, another thing that they had to do, that they were all of a sudden now being tasked with the duty of becoming kitchen staff. That was not the situation at all. And also, as we had gone through implementation, we figured out what the classroom routines would be. And with that, also, we reached out to parents in the community. And, we had to address the concerns of the parents of the district, where some of the parents were having some very serious concerns in terms of the menu items. They didn't approve of the menu items. They felt that they could that they fed their children at home, and they didn't want their children to have whatever we were offering. So first and foremost, the program was optional. If a parent fed their child breakfast at home, the child did not they were not obligated to eat here at school. It was just an offering. So it wasn't something that was mandatory. And then also, we spent a good amount of time really going through and talking about the nutritional state standards here in Rhode Island. And when we were first rolling this out, Sodexo had a structure and a policy where their items were selected based on nutritional standards that actually exceeded what the state was requiring. And Sodexo had already moved in this direction in anticipation of the state and of the USDA bringing forward these higher regulations. So one of the issues we did run into initially was a limitation of menu selection. We were having challenges finding the breakfast items that fit the criteria that we needed for nutritional standards, but also items that were unitized. We talked about the fact that we needed to have these items individually wrapped, something that kids could grab and go. And so what's happened now, as of July 1st, the USDA has moved forward on these regulations, and so therefore food companies and manufacturers have all of a sudden now come forward to change their recipes, change their formula, so that their products are now meeting these higher standards. And so right now we have a pretty diverse menu offering. We have the pancakes and the waffles, and similar to what Eddie had spoken about, we had the concern about the syrup. with the pancakes. So what we actually found was a Pillsbury product that we could heat in the bag, and it was it's the little maple flavored mini pancakes and the maple flavored mini waffles. So we found items that helped us to anticipate and kind of avoid what we felt was going to be kind of a disaster or a big mess by serving syrup with kindergarten and first graders. So we made these adjustments. We offer, Go-Gurts as a yogurt choice. We have whole grain muffins. We have bagels with cream cheese. So we have very traditional breakfast items, but they exceed the state standards for nutrition and also support us in having a really kind of clean and seamless operation, which I'll get to next. So next slide, please. So to get into the actual operation of how we run breakfast in the classroom here, first with the rollout and with the plan, we really had to map out the equipment and the consumables that we would need. And the startup cost and funding to purchase the equipment up front came from the pre-existing federal reimbursement fund that was there. And so, for example, our breakfast is served in coolers. We purchased the carts to carry the coolers. We have 2 coolers per classroom. One cooler is dedicated for the entree items and fruit, and the other cooler is dedicated for the beverages, the milk and the juice. And so we purchased 2 coolers for every single classroom. We purchased enough carts to ship the coolers and deploy them out into the hallways. And we planned out a timeline where the kitchen workers would be able to load these coolers the morning of service. So we open our doors at 8 o'clock. My kitchen staff is in place prior. They will load all of the food and beverages, load the carts, deploy out to the hallways, deliver those coolers right to the door of the classroom prior to the 8 o'clock bell. The idea behind that was, again, reinforcing this idea of a seamless transition. And again, we're elementary school, so we have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you have younger children. The idea was for the classroom teachers, upon arrival, picking up their classroom from the schoolyard, coming into the school, going to their classroom. We wanted their breakfast coolers right there by the door waiting for them so that they could just scoop those coolers up just as you would your morning paper when it hits your front door at your home. The teachers have taught into a routine. They really have fine-tuned a breakfast routine that works for them in their classroom. So, for example, when a teacher in a class hit the door, they'll have 2 students that they've assigned. That's their job, to bring in the breakfast coolers. Those students will unzip those coolers, open it up. Children will know the routine in terms of how the teacher wants them to access those items. It could be something as simple as you're putting away your books, handing in your homework, swing by the breakfast table, grab your items, head back to your desk. So with that, the teachers have really taught into it. And by having the coolers there, the teachers having a routine, it gets the morning started. So the kids are focused, they have a task. Once they have their breakfast item, the teachers plan for a meaningful activity that can occur during that time. So again, it could be an academic reinforcement activity, it could be a community building activity, but there's something that's already been planned and anticipated. Now, once the children are done with breakfast, and they're done eating in an average 10 minutes, maybe 15 on the outside, the children are taught, again, a cleanup routine, much as they have when they come to the cafeteria at lunchtime. They're very capable, and the children they just clean up their area, they'll dispose of their garbage, and again, the consumable items, such as the garbage bags, the napkins, spoons, we actually load the classroom with all of these consumables so that the teacher has it right there. So coolers will open. A teacher may have a child that opens the garbage bag. That's their job. They set up the garbage bag. When they're all done, approximately, again, about 15 minutes into the morning, the same students will return, zip up those coolers, put those back out into the hallway along with the garbage bag. and the teacher's done, and they're clean, and they're ready to go. Part of the consumables that we anticipated, we worried about children needing to go to the bathroom to wash their hands after eating their muffin. So we anticipated, and we've purchased the hand wipes, the little wet naps. So every teacher has a box of 500 wet naps, and as they start to run low, we replenish that. We worried about the little spills. They have a little bit of juice on their desk. It gets a little sticky. They have some crumbs. So we went out and we purchased a supply of kid wipes. They're similar to Clorox wipes, but they're child-friendly. And so we've loaded those into the classroom. And we also still have our custodial staff that's on call, so in case there is a bigger spill, teachers know, pick up the phone, call the office, someone will be right there to take care of it. And so with that, the coolers, the garbage, everything's out in the hallway, out of the way, teacher carries on with their regular routine. We purchased, part of the equipment purchase was anticipating the garbage pickup. So we purchased large garbage bins on wheels that the custodial staff, now all they do mid-morning, we set a time for us, it's about 10 o'clock. They walk the hallways, pick up all the garbage bags, and it's gone. So this way, it's, again, minimal loss of instructional time, minimal labor on the teacher's part. It breeds student independence, and we built it into the regular morning routine of the school. My kitchen ladies will then, round about the same time, come back out in the hallway with the empty carts, pull those coolers, return back to the cafeteria, and outload. Now, with the accountability, we simply have a clipboard that lives in the cooler that has the class list on it, and the children have been taught that as they go up to their breakfast, they grab their items, there's a pencil right there with the clipboard, they just put a check mark next to their name. And so the kitchen ladies, once they pull back the coolers, they outload the leftover items, they pull those clipboards, and then that accountability gets entered into the computer back on the kitchen side. And so with that, some final thoughts. First and foremost, what we found over the evolution of this program is that we had children and students that were hungry. And we definitely feel that it is always a good thing to feed children. The impact on the classroom instruction, we really have not seen a negative impact at all. It really has just been negligible. There is no loss of instructional time. It's just a routine that we embed and incorporate into our regular morning. There's opportunity now for added social interaction to build that classroom culture, because prior to this opportunity, it was always jumping right into instruction in terms of hand in your homework, sit at your desk, open your book, and you're isolated. Now it's, okay, we're having breakfast, and I'm designing some activity that's going to allow you that opportunity to engage with your peers. The federal reimbursement funds that return back to the district, that's huge. And we end up seeing that benefit back here on the school site. The breakfast in the program has also, again, allowed us to support our families, the businesses within the state, and to really take a look at having a lot of the side benefits with even just energy use and environmental waste. So we really have, in a very short period of time, implemented this program where we're garnering a great number of benefits across many domains. And so, yeah, I absolutely highly recommend districts to consider this, to roll that out, and you know, to really tailor this as a program that fits your school.
Thank you, Susan. As I stated before, if you have any questions, please use the box on your screen to submit the questions to any of the speakers. Susan, just particularly to you, there is a question that came in. Another principal wants to know, did you see kids that started out as optional and participating that they actually wanted to become or participate in breakfast?
Yes, we did see that. In particular, once we started the program and we were cycling through our breakfast menu, the students that were not participating, the majority of those students were eating breakfast at home, and so the families were just saying, I don't want my child eating twice. Once they really started to see what was cycling for breakfast every morning, the children were going home telling their parents that they wanted to participate. And because it's universal free, it actually, I had the parents come in to say, I want my child to participate now. You know, he or she wants to have breakfast, and it's fine by me now. And then, interesting, the parents would say, now it makes my morning a bit easier. So we had a good number of parents roll into the program that had that opinion at first. Then we had another cohort of parents that did not want their children to participate because they didn't feel that the breakfast item was nutritional. They didn't approve of the Pillsbury mini pancakes, and so again, once we've cycled through the menu items and the parents themselves have had a chance to really see the products, we have brought in again a number of those families. So we will always have families where they feed their children breakfast at home and they don't want them eating twice, which is absolutely fine. But I think just by them seeing the program, seeing the breakfast items, it's convinced many of our families to come on board and to participate, because the benefit, again, it does make the morning routine at home easier, and the breakfast products exceed the Rhode Island State Nutritional Standards.
That ties into the next question. Do you serve both cold and hot items?
Yes, we do. The pancakes and the mini waffles, for example, are hot items, and this was, again, a discussion that we had in terms of menu planning, because we needed to find breakfast items that were unitized, in other words, individually wrapped, and that we could heat in a timely manner in the morning. And it just so happens that particular product, for example, the mini pancakes and the mini waffles, the bag is created of, I guess, some type of a plastic that we are able to load those. They come frozen to us. We can load them on the sheet pans, throw them into the ovens that morning, and warm them right in the bag. Not every product comes that way, so we do have that combination. So there will be hot breakfast certain mornings. Other mornings there will be a cold breakfast. We're looking toward moving more toward the hot items. For example, there are sausage biscuits and egg and cheese wraps now being produced by companies that we will be introducing this year into the menu cycle. So eventually we'd like to see a total hot breakfast with a cold item as a second item. It's just at this stage a matter of finding the product that we can heat in its wrapper that morning. But again, because the USDA has changed their standards across the board, there are many, many, many more vendors now offering these products, which is why this year is going to be an exciting year, because we're always evolving, but we're going to undergo a pretty dramatic menu change because of the availability of the selection of items.
Thank you so much, Susan. Our next speaker is Raphael Crawford, who's the principal at Maynard Elementary in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long day for most people, so I will not rehash what Susan and Eddie have said. Actually, I probably will come to their schools and have breakfast, because their menus seem to be much more diverse than mine. I will just start by saying that Maynard is a special place. We're a very small school, and for me, that is a very good thing. I've been principal at very large schools, and I'm thinking I'm in hog heaven right now. But we have about 200 children right now. They're in grades K through 5. 85% of them are black. and then we have about 5% who are Hispanic, and then the remaining 10% are white. All of our children are, or the overwhelming majority of our children are socioeconomically disadvantaged. We have faculty and staff, a total of 38 people in our building, and we have 2 teachers per grade level. Next slide, please. We also have the universal free breakfast program. Everybody at our school eats breakfast and lunch free. We had less than 20 children who were actually paying for lunch, and this is my second year at this school. So we do have the universal free meal program as well. The big thing, the impetus, I guess, for us when the opportunity came to try to pilot last year for us was that we had a chronic problem with tardiness. Being a small school, it seemed that most days half of our children were not here, and the first part of the instructional day was constantly interrupted. After the program began, initially we saw about 60% of our children who were chronically late, and then by the end of the year we saw that only about 7%. So we attribute that success to breakfast in the classrooms. Our parents came to depend heavily on being able to get food for their children at school, because most of our parents don't work. There are no jobs and very little, actually no development in this community. And so most of the parents don't have personal resources, and they rely heavily on subsidies and any kind of assistance that they can get. So getting your child to school on time meant that the child was going to be given breakfast. And of course for us, we were happy that the child was here so that we could begin teaching them and have more instructional time. So for us, the big benefit was that we were able to decrease the chronic tardiness. With respect to other issues or other things that we saw as benefits, we had lots of behavioral problems, especially in the morning hours. And I will just echo, I think, Susan, in saying that a lot of the times when we actually investigated, had a nurse come by, the child was actually just hungry. They had a headache, they had a stomach ache, and they just didn't want to be bothered. And so being able to feed them all, because prior to this program, not everyone ate breakfast because they didn't know it was available, and in our district, it just was not well publicized, or it wasn't well offered on a large scale. So now, with the advent of this program and introduction to our school, then that just squashed that particular situation. So we saw that there was less behavior issues and problems with children, and the parents were very happy because they knew that they would get their child here, and the child would be fed as well. Many of our children come from very unstable environments. We have lots of parents both of whom are incarcerated, and some of our children actually just live from pillar to post, if you will, and so they don't have very what most of us would say are optimal home situations, and so we have to be more than educators with our children. You can go to the next slide. Like the other two principals, we just kind of make sure that we don't have carts, the large carts. We have the hot and cold small carts that we deliver to the classrooms. We have the luxury of being a small school, so we all pitch in, including myself. In the mornings when I get here, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, and our safety patrol members, we let those children come in earlier, and we are responsible for getting the carts in the classrooms. We take everything that is necessary. Each classroom gets 2 rolling carts. We take that, the trash bag, the cafeteria manager has a check-off sheet so that she can input it into the computer later. But everything is delivered. Our children come into the building at 7:30, and when they come in, then they go directly to their classrooms. When they go to the classrooms, the teachers are there. Now, unfortunately, our teachers don't get to eat free, so they have to bring their own lunch, or I provide something every day, a little light something. But the students go to the classrooms, and the teachers are there, and they use that as just a morning community time. The teachers do instruction, they will use that time after taking roll, attendance, and doing whatever their classroom routines are. While the children are eating, they review lessons or talk about, pre-teach and talk about what's going to happen that day. I echo, and I don't know if it was Eddie, I believe it was Eddie who said that it was about relationship building, and that's what we really use that time for, because our children really need to connect with other adults, many of them, and so the teachers really enjoy that time of the day, and the children enjoy that time of the day. And so most of the children are anxious to get here because they want to spend that time with the teacher, other than some direct instructional time or some time that they perceive to be direct instruction. So they go up to the classrooms, and at about 5 minutes till 8, they put all of their trash out in the hall. They put both rolling carts in the garbage bags. They put everything in the hall. I went out and bought some 5-gallon buckets from Walmart we did have an issue initially with cereal and spilled milk everywhere in the classrooms. And so I simply bought some $3 buckets, and every classroom has one. They put the buckets out in the hall as well. And those of us who are not in the classroom are responsible for every morning going to pick all of that up and bringing it back. And that has been just a really good thing for our school. Additionally, we give each child, we try to have our children walk, and we give every child in the mornings, along with their breakfast, a small bottle of water. And so they get that, and they're able to keep it with them. You can go to the next slide. Our instructional time begins at 8, and because breakfast is from 7:30 until 7:55, there really is no interruption to our instructional time. Children who arrive after 8 o'clock are kept in the cafeteria, and we feed them before they go to class, so that way teachers don't have to get frantic or become upset if a child comes back into the classroom with food after any spills have been cleaned. So we just keep them downstairs and feed them. Benefits, again, for us have been, we've seen a significant drop in our tardiness, and starting this year, that's working well as also. So we've seen a significant drop in our, a reduction in our tardiness, and we also saw an increase. We started the year with about a 93% attendance rate, and we ended the year and still are at about a 98%. We also, again, just want to make sure that the school can ensure that children get at least a couple of decent meals a day, very nutritious, and because of their home lives for some of them or many of them, we can do at least that much. And again, I just briefly mentioned behavior infractions, and when we ran our tallies last year, we saw a 27% reduction in behavior infractions, especially before lunch. And we attribute that to the fact that children had come in, they had time to connect with their teacher, and they were given a meal, and then they went into their instruction for the day. The parents, I was happy to say that this year when the parents came in, first day of school, first weeks of school, all of our parents asked if we were still going to do breakfast in the classroom, and they were very happy when I assured them that that was something that we would continue. So the parents have come to rely on receiving that service as well. You can go to the next slide, please. What I would recommend, I would just echo the other two principles, just establish a really good relationship with your cafeteria manager, and I understand that one of the cafeteria managers is on this call. That is a great thing. It sounds like all three of us have been very fortunate to have great people working with us, but we have to get buy-in from the cafeteria manager and their staff, as well as custodians, teachers. We met with the parents. We had 3 separate meetings with parents and just talked about what it would do for the children, how it would help them, and parents kind of bought into it. And once the parents bought into it, the school staff was just forced to kind of make it happen. So that really helped us, just talking to parents first. And I didn't talk so much about being tardy, but I talked about the benefits of great nutrition and being fed in the morning and what that does to brain cells, and giving kids water and along a great night's sleep, and all of that whole spiel helped to get the support we needed. So we met with the parents and talked about that. I still give them updates about how it's going, what's working out. We've not really had anyone to question the menu. Again, our menu is not very exciting, but it is nutritious and it is stable. We have both cold and hot items, but we don't have the variety that the other principals have mentioned. We, again, make sure that we cut off the meal in time for class to begin on time, and we hold any child who comes after that, we just feed them downstairs and send them up. And like Susan, we provide extra cleaning supplies in our classrooms. Again, that's not a big issue. That was a big fear for our teachers, but I think they soon saw that I had done everything that I could do to alleviate those fears, and we wanted to address them. So we have extra napkins, and everybody has a broom and a mop in their room, and we actually have sinks in our classroom, but also we keep hand sanitizer as well. But they have everything that they need, and that has not been a problem, especially after I got the buckets. And we encourage children to drink all of the milk and the juice, but they don't. So the rule is they have to dump out what they don't drink, and so that prevented a lot of spills. Again, the teachers their big concern was just the mess, and then instructional time, because they said, I can't remember if it were Eddie or Susan who said, my teachers also believed, well, now you want us to serve meals on top of everything else. And so what I simply shared with them was, no, I want you to have a meal with your children. If you have a meal with them, that's very different. And so they were building relationships and community building, and that is, of all the things I think the teachers like about the program, they all talk about that 30 minutes of the day where they actually get to sit down and spend time with their children, because most of the teachers here don't eat lunch with their children. Next slide, please. That was it, then. I would just say to principals that it begins with the principal, and if the principal wants to make it happen, it will. There are some very real, teachers have some very real, I think we have to be very realistic, and some of the concerns about spills and instructional time are very valid, and I think you just have to go to them and do whatever you can to alleviate those fears and show that you're trying to work through and to be proactive with those. But it works really well. I'm a big proponent of this program. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Raphael. We have one question for you.
Okay.
And Susan, you can chime in on if this pertains to you too. What do you do with the students that arrive that previously ate in the cafeteria and that have to now wait for class to start?
Well, for us, our instruction classes start at 8, and so since they're late and we have already gotten the carts, it's a little tricky if they come right 5 after 8, 10 after 8. That is the time we're actually picking the carts up. If the carts are still there, then we let them just eat, because we have tables in the halls as well, and so we let them sit outside the classroom and eat. But if the carts are gone, we separate out, once we do attendance, we separate out some meals. We have a little extra, what the cafeteria manager refers to as her stash, and so she keeps extra meals. So when children come at 8:15 or 8:30, it is just automatic that we ask the parent if they've had breakfast, and if the answer is no, they automatically go to the cafeteria and they eat, and then we get them on in class. Now that works for us because I don't have 1,000 children.
Right, okay. And then what about when they arrive? Susan, do you have any, when the students arrive, what do you do with the kids?
With our program, we go right to the classroom at 8 o'clock. And if there are children that already ate at home and are not going to be eating breakfast in the classroom, again, they're still engaged in that activity. So if the teacher has them working on a math paper or a problem-solving paper, the child's still engaged in that activity. They're just not eating breakfast. Or if they come in late, we have something similar to what Raphael has, where the teachers will have the little stash, but also that's why we time the cooler pickup to be a bit later. So if a child comes in at 8:15, even 8:30, the class might be done with breakfast, but the coolers are still outside in the hallway. So that child, if they haven't eaten, at that point, they can just grab something out of the cooler and just get right in and start the day.
Okay. We have another question for both of you, or Eddie, if Eddie's still on the line. From an accountability standpoint, was one of you that mentioned the TIC system. How do you account for each individual student?
Well, I know for us, having the roster on the clipboard becomes key. And so if the child is eating, there's a check mark next to their name. And so when it goes back into the cafeteria to be entered into the system, only the names and lunch numbers of those children that have the check mark are the ones that get entered.
And we do.
Oh, go ahead, Raphael. Sorry.
We do the same thing. The teacher is responsible. Initially, that duty was given to some of the children, and we just had a little problem with that, with children actually doing the check off. And so now the teachers actually check off, and then the sheet goes back to the cafeteria, and they input the number of those children who actually consumed the meal.
And Susan, what is the free and reduced percentage for your school?
94%.
For both of you, how did you go about the outreach with your community and your students and your parents?
Well, I know on site here, it first did start with building a leadership team that was going to help with the planning of this. And so just getting the word out in terms of, for the parents, I did a letter. For the staff, I did a memo. Just outlined what the superintendent had stated and what the intention was for this program, and that we needed to have voices. We needed people to provide feedback. And so just by starting very simply with that general communication and leaving it open, not already making decisions and sending that out, that was key. And the leadership team became very, very important throughout the whole pilot process.
And for us, we have a school leadership team, but we also have a parent advisory committee, and it's just a group of parents that are not necessarily the same parents who are a part of the PTA. And I actually went to them first and talked to them and asked them what we could do for them. And one of the things they said would be to kind of help provide. They didn't say breakfast. They just said provide some food for the children. When I asked the staff, our faculty and staff, I asked the staff, what is it that we could do or should do in the mornings to be most helpful to our young scholars? And overwhelmingly, most of them said we should find a way to provide something for them to eat. We give them water, but we should give them something other than what they can get in the cafeteria, because half of them weren't getting it because they weren't here. And so with that, it just was a perfect fit for us.
And Susan, do your teachers eat for free in your school?
No, we don't. We had talked about that, and Sodexo, our food service provider, was ready to incorporate in the breakfast count to accommodate for the teachers. But when we brought it back to the leadership team, they had just felt that they were fine. It was all right and that they were fine, and it wasn't something that was a priority for them. So we didn't actually incorporate that into our pilot.
We also want to encourage principals who are focused on the menu items to work closely with your food service director in your district. And I know that you have done that, Raphael, correct?
I have. John Dickel is our food service director, and he has been a godsend. I think as a principal trying to implement something very new, he was very understanding. He didn't come in and say, this is my area, this is the way it will be. What he said to me was, you tell me how it needs to work for you, and then let's see how we can make that happen. And so that gave me license to then go back to my people and ask, what does it need to look like? What is it that will make it more palatable to you? And so we talked about all of the things, all of the mess and all of the interruptions to instruction, all of the things. We just talked about all of that. And then I took it back to him and said, these are the major concerns. And with that, he was able to get with his team, and they produced menu items that would not be drippy, sticky, messy, and it just worked really well for us. But he asked me what I needed from him, rather than telling me, this is a great idea and this is what you're going to do.
Great. And then how much time, this would probably be one of the last questions, how much time do you allow between communicating with the parents and the actual implementation or the start of the program?
For this program, we were doing it within 2 weeks. Again, there was a need that had been verbalized or vocalized from the parents, as well as from our own faculty. So we were ready to roll in 2 weeks, and it took us about 2 weeks to work out the major kinks, and then maybe another week to work out minor things. But we didn't know, for instance, the trash bags were not of good quality, so they would leak everywhere. And then we decided, well, we need buckets because we have cheap trash bags. And there were little things like that. And then you have those people who say, aha, I knew it wasn't going to work. And so you always have those folks. So we just had to work out those minor details. But in a month, we were running like something like clockwork.
Yeah, for us it was probably about a month because of the purchase of the equipment, the coolers and the carts, and to get all of that in. We began, once we got the word out, we convened the team immediately and began planning, creating, again, that shopping list of all the materials, communicating that back out to the community and out to the staff. But we were up and running in about 4 weeks by the time we received all the equipment coming in, the breakfast inventory, by the time we got through all of that. And similar to what Raphael had said, as we were moving forward, we addressed the different glitches. And I think we had the same situation with the garbage bags. Our first initial garbage bags leaked. And so then we replaced those, and then we were fine, and then that vendor stopped making those, so then we ran into having to find another vendor. So we worked out the kinks as it was going. All these little bugs we had to work out, but being able to come back to the table with your team to gather that feedback on a constant basis, the program became my morning routine. As the classes came in, that for the first 4 weeks or so, I mean, that's what I was doing. I was in and out of the classrooms, watching it, getting feedback from the kids, from the teachers, how's it going, really just taking a look at it. And again, because we're a large facility, our 4 floors, 670 students, it was the tweaks we had to make for kindergarten were different from tweaks we had to make for 5th graders. And so, but it was the fact that as a principal, you have to be out there, you have to watch it, you have to see it, you have to talk with your people, get the feedback, and make those tweaks, move it forward so that the experience stays positive. And as Raphael had mentioned, so that you don't fuel any of the naysayers. Hey, I knew that wasn't going to work. I'm like, no, okay, you know what? We have a little problem, we'll fix it. We'll work on it. What are your suggestions? And you move forward.
Great,
and
thank you.
Can I just add one quick thing? And I know that both Susan and Eddie have done this. I talked to my students, and I asked them what they thought about it. And all of them that I've talked to, they all like it. And I'm sure everyone has done that. And that just kind of lets you know it's the right thing.
Absolutely. I have to agree. I look at it as a win-win situation. Ultimately, I find it very hard to find anything negative about feeding children.
Right.
And then the benefits that we get across all the different domains that we've experienced, again, the academics, the tardiness, the behavior, reduction in the behavioral incidences, right down to what we're seeing with the local economy. It's a win-win situation. And interesting, because we piloted, we became a site where many other PTOs from other schools had come to visit. I gave so many tours of our school during that pilot year where, as they were rolling this out, parents wanted to see what was happening. It was going to be implemented at their school. They were able to come and see it live and in action, and I also was able to host superintendents and other school leaders from other districts that were considering the program. And so the fact that they were able to see the benefits, and one of the parents from a visiting school had posed that question in one of my classes, and it was very interesting. When we had asked the students to please raise their hands if they ate breakfast when we served it before school in the cafeteria, how many children would eat breakfast, and very few, 6, 7 students raised their hands. And then we asked them, how many of you eat breakfast on a regular basis now that it's in the classroom? Literally 95% of the students raised their hands. And then we asked them which would they prefer if they had a choice of going back to serving it before school where it was in the cafeteria or keeping it the way it was now. All of the students wanted it in the classroom. And that was a very powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks to you both. On the screen are resources for principals to look at all the Partners for Breakfast in the Classroom, the NAESP Foundation, the NEA Health Information Network, the Food Research and Action Center, and the School Nutrition Foundation. And finally, here is the contact information for each of the speakers today. You'll hear how they're great advocates for breakfast in the classroom, so please use them as a resource to, and I hope that that's okay with the two of you.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure
Oh,
it's okay
absolutely.
because it can be a challenge, but it has many rewards. So thanks again for participating, and thank you for supporting us and helping us end childhood hunger.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.